Have you ever asked your child to do something and before they've even had the chance to move, you hear yourself saying it again? Put your shoes on. Come on, I already asked you. Did you hear me? By the time you're walking out the door, you're wondering, why do I have to repeat myself every single day? If you've ever felt that way, I hope this video gives you a little bit of relief because sometimes what looks like not listening is actually your child's brain still trying to process what was the very first thing you said. Today, I'm going to show you what might be happening during those 10 seconds after you give a direction, because once you start to understand those 10 seconds, you might never look at not listening the same way again. So I want you to shift your brain. You're in the middle of answering an email. Someone walks in and says, "Hey, can you send me that report?" Before you even had a chance to process what they asked, they say, "Oh, and don't forget to call Sarah." Then before you finish thinking about that, they add, "Can you print those papers too?" Now you're irritated, not because you weren't listening, but because your brain is still trying to process the first request while new information keeps getting piled on and piled on. Now imagine while you're trying to remember all of that, they look at you and say, "Are you even listening?" At that point, you're thinking, "I was until you kept talking." That's exactly what I want you to think about when you're giving a child a direction. Sometimes we mistake processing for ignoring, when what our child might actually need is a little more time for their brain to catch up. So, what's actually happening during those 10 seconds? For many children, especially children with ADHD, autism, or executive functioning challenges, their brain isn't just ignoring the direction, it's processing it. And when we give a direction, our child has to do several things before they ever move. First, they have to stop what they're doing. They have to shift their attention to you. Next, they have to hold the words in their working memory. Then they have to make a plan. And finally, they have to get their body moving. That all happens in just a few seconds. And for some children, those steps happen almost automatically. For others, that process, it just takes a little bit longer. Researchers call this processing speed. It's the amount of time it takes for the brain to understand information, make sense of it, and then decide what to do next. So if we repeat ourselves too quickly, "Shoes on, come on, let's go," we're not always helping. Sometimes we're actually giving their brain new information before it's finished processing the first direction. Imagine trying to load a web page and every 2 seconds, someone hits the refresh button. It doesn't make it load faster. Sometimes it just interrupts the process. That's why I want you to try something different. Give the direction, then wait, because you're giving your child's brain time to do its job. But what if they still don't move? Now, I know some of you might be thinking, "Miss Laker, I've waited 10 seconds. Sometimes I've waited longer, but my child still doesn't move." And that's important because the goal of the 10-second pause isn't to magically make every child listen. The goal is to answer a question. Was my child still processing, or do they need more support? If they start moving during the 10 seconds, great. Their brain just needed time. But if those 10 seconds pass and nothing happens, that's your clue. Not to repeat yourself, but to get curious. Maybe they didn't understand the direction. Maybe they forgot the first step. Maybe they got distracted. Maybe the task feels overwhelming. Or maybe they need you to help them get started. That's very different than assuming that they're not listening. Because once you know why they're stuck, you can give the support that they actually need. Sometimes that looks like breaking the task into one small step. Sometimes it looks like walking over and helping them start. Other times it looks like realizing this isn't defiance at all, just understanding that, knowing it's a skill that's still developing. So the next time you give your child a direction, don't just count to 10. Watch, because those 10 seconds are giving you information. They're telling you whether your child needed more time or needed more support. And that's a very different way of looking at not listening.